My parents cut me out of their will after I paid their bills for 3 years. So I cancelled every payment and went on a trip to Thailand instead. The faint, rhythmic hum of the server racks was the soundtrack to my life for 3 years. It was a constant, low-grade thrum that vibrated through the floor, up my chair, and into my bones. A reminder of the extra hours, the weekend shifts, the life I was putting on hold. It was the sound of my parents' mortgage being paid. It was the sound of their lights staying on, their car insurance being current, their pantry staying full. It was the sound of me, their son, being the good, responsible one. It all started with a phone call, as these things so often do. My father, his voice uncharacteristically small, explained the situation. A bad investment, a sure thing that had turned out to be anything but. Their retirement savings, the cushion they had so carefully built, had evaporated. It was a classic story, one I'd heard from friends about their own parents, but I never thought it would be mine. My older brother, Kevin, was the golden child, the one with the high-flying sales job, the impressive title, the beautiful wife, and the 2 perfect kids. He was the one they bragged about at dinner parties. I was the quiet one, the IT guy, the steady, reliable, and ultimately, invisible one. When the financial crisis hit, all eyes, full of desperate hope, turned to me. Kevin, they explained, had his own family to think about, a certain lifestyle to maintain. His kids were in private school, their mortgage was substantial. He couldn't possibly help. But me? I was single. I lived in a modest apartment. My life had the kind of flexibility that, in their eyes, made me the perfect candidate for the role of family savior. And I, wanting to be the hero, wanting to ease the fear in my mother's eyes and the shame in my father's, agreed. I said yes without hesitation. For the first year, it felt noble. I created a separate spreadsheet, meticulously tracking every bill. Their mortgage, their utilities, their groceries, their car payments. I set up automatic transfers, becoming the silent, digital guardian of their financial stability. I cut back on my own expenses. Lunches with coworkers became a packed sandwich at my desk. The new graphics card I'd been saving for was forgotten. A weekend trip with friends was out of the question. My life shrank, but I told myself it was temporary. I was helping my family. That's what good sons do. My parents were endlessly grateful, at least in the beginning. "What would we do without you?" my mother would sigh over the phone, her voice thick with emotion. "You're our rock, son," my father would say, clapping me on the shoulder during my weekly visits. Kevin would call occasionally, his voice breezy and distant. "Heard you're holding down the fort," he'd say, as if I were house-sitting for a weekend. "Good on you, little brother." He never once offered to contribute, not even a token amount. He'd post pictures on social media of his family's vacation in the Bahamas or their new luxury SUV, and my parents would like every single one, their comments overflowing with pride. Meanwhile, I was eating instant noodles for the 3rd time that week to make sure their premium cable package wasn't interrupted. The second year, the nobility began to fray, replaced by a quiet, simmering resentment. The temporary situation was starting to feel awfully permanent. My parents' gratitude became expectation. The phone calls were less about thanking me and more about reminding me that the property tax was due or that the car needed new tires. They stopped asking about my life, my work, my own dreams. I had been typecast in the role of financial provider, and it seemed no one was interested in the man behind the money. I was at their house one Saturday afternoon, fixing their notoriously unreliable printer. My dad had asked me to find an old warranty document he was sure was in his desk drawer. The desk was a chaotic jumble of papers, old receipts, and dried-up pens. As I rummaged through the files, my fingers brushed against a thick, cream-colored envelope. It was sealed, but the words "Last Will and Testament" were printed neatly on the front, along with the name of a law firm I didn't recognize. It was dated just 3 months prior. A cold, prickling curiosity washed over me. I knew I shouldn't. It was an invasion of privacy, a line that shouldn't be crossed. But 3 years of sacrifice had eroded my sense of propriety. I felt a strange, compelling pull, a need to understand. My hands trembled slightly as I carefully slid a letter opener under the flap, slicing it open. I pulled out the sheaf of crisp, heavy paper. My heart hammered against my ribs as I started to read. The legal language was dense, but the meaning was brutally clear. The house, the cars, the remaining savings I didn't even know they had, every single possession and asset was to be left to our beloved son, Kevin. I scanned the document again, my eyes darting back and forth, searching for my own name. I found it on the third page, in a short, dismissive clause that felt like a slap in the face. To our son, Daniel, it read, "We leave our love and affection, knowing that he has already been sufficiently provided for during our lifetime and has established a stable life of his own." Sufficiently provided for. The words echoed in the silent room. The money I had poured into their lives, the money I had earned through sleepless nights and foregone dreams, wasn't a loan. It wasn't a gift. It was, in their minds, my prepayment on an inheritance I was never going to receive. I was not their son, I was a service provider. And my service was apparently no longer required in the afterlife. I felt the blood drain from my face. The hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen seemed to grow louder, filling the void where my love and respect for my parents had just been. I walked out of the office, the will still in my hand, and found them in the living room, watching a game show. I held up the papers. "What is this?" I asked, my voice dangerously calm. My mother's face paled. My father refused to meet my eyes, his attention suddenly glued to the television. "Oh, Daniel," my mother began, wringing her hands. "We were going to tell you. It's just legal stuff. It doesn't mean anything." "It doesn't mean anything?" I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. "It means you've cut me out. It means that for 3 years, I've been keeping this house afloat, and you've decided to give it, and everything else, to the son who hasn't contributed a single penny." My father finally looked at me, his expression not apologetic, but defensive. "Kevin needs it more, Daniel. He has a family. He has a certain image to maintain. You're practical. You've always been good with money." The condescension in his tone was the final straw. "I've been good with money because I've been giving it all to you." I finally shouted, the dam of my composure breaking. "I put my life on hold for you. And this is how you repay me? By erasing me?" "Family isn't about money, Daniel," my mother said, her voice trembling. It was the ultimate hypocrisy, a line so absurdly out of place that it stunned me into silence. I looked at their faces, the faces I had loved and sacrificed for, and I saw strangers. They didn't see a son who had given everything. They saw a utility, a resource that had been fully tapped. I dropped the will on the coffee table. "You're right," I said, my voice now devoid of any emotion. "It isn't about money. It's about respect. And you have shown me none." I walked out of the house without another word, the sound of the game show host's cheerful voice fading behind me. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in front of my computer, the glow of the screen illuminating my face. The resentment had cooled into a hard, diamond-sharp resolve. I opened my banking app. There they were, a neat list of scheduled payments, a digital monument to my foolishness. The mortgage. The electricity. The gas. The internet. The premium cable package. The car insurance. The home security system. With a steady hand, I began to cancel them. One by one. Click. The mortgage payment to Megacorp Bank, cancelled. Click. The electricity bill to City Power, cancelled. Click. The gas bill, cancelled. Each click was a detonation, a severing of a toxic tie. With each cancellation, I felt a piece of myself returning. The weight on my shoulders, a burden I had carried for so long I'd forgotten it was there, began to lift. I felt light. I felt free. I felt a righteous, exhilarating fury. The next morning, my phone rang. It was Kevin. "What did you do?" he yelled, without so much as a hello. Mom and Dad are freaking out. They got a notification that the mortgage payment was cancelled. I leaned back in my chair, a small smile playing on my lips. I've stopped paying for things that aren't mine, Kevin, I said calmly. But, you can't just do that. They'll lose the house. Then I guess their sole heir will have to step up, I replied. This is what you wanted, isn't it? You're the one who gets everything. You can start by getting the bills. There was a sputtering on the other end of the line. He blustered, he threatened, he called me selfish and irresponsible. I listened patiently, and when he was done, I said, "Goodbye, Kevin," and hung up. I looked at my bank account. For the first time in 3 years, I saw a future. My future. The money that was supposed to leave my account at the end of the month was just sitting there. It was a substantial amount. Enough for a down payment on a small condo. Enough to start investing again. Or enough for something else entirely. An ad popped up on the side of my screen. A picture of a pristine white beach, turquoise water, and a long-tail boat. Escape to Thailand, the text read. It was impulsive. It was reckless. It was the most sensible thing I could possibly do. I booked a one-way ticket for the following week. The feeling of the plane lifting off the runway was indescribable. It was more than just leaving a city, it was leaving a life, a version of myself I no longer recognized or respected. I landed in Bangkok and was immediately swept up in a whirlwind of sights, sounds, and smells. The oppressive humidity, the fragrant aroma of street food, the chaotic symphony of tuk-tuks and chatter. It was overwhelming and utterly intoxicating. I didn't want to be a tourist. I wanted to disappear. I traveled north to Chiang Mai, staying in cheap hostels, eating at street stalls, and speaking to other travelers. I heard their stories of escape and discovery, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged somewhere. One day, I saw a flyer in a coffee shop, a plea for volunteers at an elephant sanctuary an hour outside the city. The picture showed a woman with kind eyes and a weathered face standing next to a majestic elephant. I felt a pull I couldn't explain. The next day, I was on a dusty bus, heading into the mountains. The sanctuary was a small, struggling operation run by a British expat named Eleanor. She was in her late 60s, with a fierce passion for the rescued elephants she cared for. The place was beautiful but chaotic. Donations were tracked in a messy ledger, expenses were a jumble of receipts in a shoebox, and their online presence was practically non-existent. Eleanor was a brilliant animal caretaker but a terrible businesswoman. I saw my opening. I can help with this, I told her, pointing at the shoebox. She looked at me with suspicion, then exhaustion. I've tried, she sighed. I'm just no good with numbers. I am, I said. And so, my new life began. I spent my days hauling hay and cleaning enclosures, and my evenings in front of a donated laptop, creating spreadsheets, building a simple website, and setting up an online donation system. I used the skills I had honed managing my parents' finances, but this time, it felt different. This was help that was wanted, needed, and deeply appreciated. Eleanor would bring me tea and tell me stories about each elephant, their traumatic pasts, and their journey to healing. I was making a tangible difference, not just paying bills, but helping to build something meaningful. I found a purpose that had nothing to do with familial obligation. I had been in Thailand for almost 4 months when the message came. It was from a cousin, a distant relative I barely spoke to. It was short and alarming. "Dan, you need to call home. It's an emergency." My blood ran cold. I had blocked my parents' and Kevin's numbers, but a determined relative had found me on social media. My hands shook as I bought a calling card and dialed Kevin's number. His voice was a wreck. He was sobbing, his words tumbling out in a torrent of panic and despair. The story was worse than I could have imagined. After I cut them off, my parents had turned to Kevin, their golden boy, their sole heir. But Kevin's success was a sham. His high-flying job was commission-based, and he'd had a terrible year. His lavish lifestyle was financed by a mountain of debt. He was leveraged to the hilt, one bad month away from ruin. He couldn't help them. He couldn't even help himself. The bills had piled up. The bank had been patient, but their patience had run out. They had started foreclosure proceedings. My parents were going to lose the house. They were going to be homeless. And in their pride and shame, they hadn't told anyone until it was too late. "It's all my fault," Kevin wept. "And yours. You just abandoned them." My first instinct was a cold, hard wave of vindication. Not my problem. They made their bed. They chose their heir. Let him deal with it. But then, an image flashed in my mind. My mother in her rose garden, her hands covered in dirt, a look of pure contentment on her face. My father in his workshop, the smell of sawdust in the air, patiently teaching me how to build a birdhouse. Memories from a different lifetime, before the money, before the will, before the betrayal. I thought of Eleanor and the elephants. I thought about what it meant to truly help someone, not just to enable them. I wasn't the same person who had left. The anger was still there, a hard kernel in my chest, but it was surrounded by something new, something stronger. I took a deep breath. "I'm coming home," I said. The flight back was the longest of my life. I wasn't coming back as the dutiful son. I was coming back as a consultant. I landed and went straight to their house. The atmosphere was thick with despair. The lawn was overgrown, and a for sale sign was hammered into the grass, a stark, brutal declaration of their failure. They sat at the kitchen table, looking frail and defeated. They wouldn't meet my eyes. Kevin was there, his face pale and drawn. There were no accusations this time, only a heavy, suffocating silence. I didn't say, "I told you so." I didn't yell. I pulled out a chair, sat down, and placed a folder on the table. "This is the plan," I said, my voice even and steady. They looked at the folder as if it were a snake. I opened it. "First," I said, "we're not saving this house. It's too big, too expensive, and it's a symbol of the bad decisions that led us here. We're going to let the bank sell it. It will clear the mortgage and most of your debts." My mother let out a small sob. My father just stared at the table. "Second," I continued, pushing a printed listing across the table. "I've found a condo for you. It's in a lovely community, it's affordable, and it's manageable. I will help with the down payment. It will be a one-time gift. A final one. After that, you are on your own." I then pulled out a spreadsheet. A budget. "This is how you will live. This is your income from Social Security, and this is what you can afford to spend. No more premium cable. No more expensive car. You will learn to live within your means." I finally turned to Kevin. "And you," I said, "will contribute this amount every month." I pointed to a figure on the spreadsheet. "You will sell your ridiculous SUV, you will downgrade your lifestyle, and you will learn what it means to be a responsible son." It was a revolution. It was brutal. It was necessary. There was resistance, of course. Tears and anger. But they had no other options. They had hit rock bottom, and I was offering them not a handout, but a ladder. It was a slow, painful process. The house was sold. They moved into the small condo. It was a bitter pill for them to swallow. Kevin sold his car and started packing his own lunch. Our relationship was strained, rebuilt on a foundation of awkward, formal civility. The easy affection of the past was gone, replaced by a clear-eyed understanding of our new roles. But it was honest. For the first time, our family was operating on a basis of truth, not illusion. A few months later, I sat in my old apartment, which now felt spacious and quiet. My parents were managing. They were learning. Kevin was paying his share, his calls to me now tinged with a grudging respect. The will was never changed. I was still officially disinherited. But it didn't matter anymore. I had my own life, my own savings, my own future. I opened my laptop and booked a flight. A round-trip ticket this time. Back to Thailand. Eleanor and the elephants were waiting. I had found my inheritance, not in a legal document, but in the freedom I had claimed for myself. I had saved my family, not by being their bank, but by forcing them to save themselves. And in doing so, I had finally, truly, saved myself.